Have you ever had a tough time making an important life decision? Well, St. Ignatius has the recipe for exactly how. As we learn through the spiritual exercises, the first thing St. Ignatius asks of us before we enter into the decision-making process is to verify that we are in a state of consolation. What this means is that we feel grace, joy, peace, that we are together with God. If we are not in a state of consolation, it means we are in a state of desolation, which also means that we feel darkness, separation from God, or anxiety. St. Ignatius asks if we are in desolation that we not start the decision-making process and that we pray for God's hand to enter into consolation before we begin to make an important decision in our lives. Once we are in a state of consolation, the first thing we need to do is pray that God has a hand in our decision and that regardless of the outcome, we will surrender our will to His. Once we enter into the decision-making process, there are 4 basic steps. The first one is to clearly define A versus B. This is not a question open-ended such as what should I do with my life, but rather 2 possible outcomes. The next portion that St. Ignatius asks us is to define the pros and the cons, to weigh out the advantages against the disadvantages. There are some cases where one variable may outweigh the rest due to gravity. Nonetheless, seeking the advantages and disadvantages could clearly communicate God's will for us in our lives. If we do not come to a conclusion, step number 3 is to take an objective view. This means to remove ourselves from the situation and eliminate the emotional element. One good way to do this is to ask ourselves, what advice would I give to a friend in the same situation? If we still have not reached a clear conclusion, the 4th and last method is to use last judgment or end of days. In other words, to look back on our lives as if we were on our deathbeds and think, what decision do I wish I would have made when I have an opportunity to face my Creator looking back on my life? And the last thing St. Ignatius asks of us is that we seek confirmation. God will communicate throughout our lives how our decision was aligned with His plan. Thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful. For more information, check out the link below. God bless.